King's Landing breathed in hushed relief when the bells tolled for the dawn coronation of a child king no longer hemmed in by roses or sparrows. The banners that fluttered above the red keep that morning bore a curious mixture of sigils. The crowned stag of Baratheon, the lion of Lannister, and, peeking in unlikely prominence from balcony rail and torch post, the mockingbird of House Baelish. Few paused to wonder how a minor lord's personal badge had found its way beside the realm's great arms. Fewer still dared utter complaint. For in the small hours before sunrise, the man who wore that bird upon his doublet had emerged as steward of all crowns and coffers, guardian of the king, and unblinking master of every whisper that flitted through the city's crooked warrens. In the throne room's half-lit length, Petyr Baelish allowed the pageant to unfold like a splendid tapestry he alone could see entire. The gold cloaks marched in two disciplined columns. The High Septon, no fanatic now, only a soft-voiced functionary of faith, recited his blessings in smooth, untroubled cadence. And Tommen Baratheon, 7 and 10 years of age, straightened under a crown newly wrought at Baelish's quiet instruction. Lighter than Robert's iron band, playful with twisted filigree lions, fitted so a boy might wear it without stooping. Tommen's small hands clutched the sword of inheritance, yet his wide blue eyes flicked to Lord Petyr more often than to the congregation. Each glance carried the same silent plea, "Tell me what to do," and each time Baelish answered with the faintest nod, as though fathering the realm as easily as he once fathered a brothel ledger. When the ceremony closed and trumpets faded, Baelish led Tommen from the dais beneath a rain of petals. The air smelled of crushed roses, though no Tyrells stood to scatter them. Marjorie's ladies had been dismissed to High Garden on the Queen Dowager's signature, yet the Riverlord's seal had guided the scroll. A flourish-winged mockingbird pressed into crimson wax. Cersei, watching, grasped the gesture's import even if the king did not. But her mouth, once sharp as a viper's, opened only to breathe shallowly against her corset stays. The cords at her wrists lay hidden beneath brocade, a reminder visible to those who knew where to look. The moment Tommen passed beyond, she angled her head to Lord Petyr in a bend of compliance that soured her wine-dark gaze. Outside the hall, sun speared the courtyard pavings. A ripple of applause met the young monarch. The sound pleased him, and he grinned. Baelish fell into step beside the boy, voice pitched for Tommen's ear alone. "A splendid beginning, your grace. The city loves you already." Tommen's cheeks flushed. "They love mother and Ser. Ser Pounce too," he ventured. But his cat had been spirited to the Tower of the Hand days ago on Baelish authority, where a litter box of gilded cedar awaited. Pets, Baelish reasoned, made useful bribes for obedience. "It is you they cheer," Petyr assured, steering the king toward an inner stair. "And a prudent ruler rewards such devotion. This afternoon you shall proclaim a remission of certain harbor levies. The small folk will feast in your name. The crown shall bear the cost." He smiled as though to soften the blow of the last clause, but Tommen only nodded, relieved to have his course charted. In the Tower of the Hand, where a sharper man than Baelish once lost his head, the regent installed himself without fanfare. The Solar's windows overlooked Blackwater Bay, a vista of ships whose taxes now flowed through his agile fingers. Ledgers cluttered every table, each marked by colored ribbons so he might see a kingdom's debts and tributes at a glance. Casterly Rock's dwindling gold, the Iron Bank's cold arithmetic, the Faith's tithes, the Reach's cargo manifests. With dispatches from Gulltown and salt pans stacked like playing cards, Lord Petyr built castles from numbers as grand as Harrenhal yet far less likely to crumble. The first weeks passed in choreographed grace. Baelish summoned the small council daily at dawn, seats reshuffled under his will. Grand Maester Pycelle retained the infirmary but ceded his ravenry to Baelish's informers. Orain Waters rose from stepstone origins to master of ships, owing everything to the faint smile Petyr spared him one evening beside a model galley. Tina Merriweather replaced Orton as mistress of coins, though every coin alike bore the mockingbird's shadow. None on the council opposed its new warden. Those who doubted found themselves posted to distant garrisons or granted lucrative offices in Old Town, conveniently far from court. Cersei dwelled in her apartments ringed by silent sisters, ostensibly for prayerful reflection on past indiscretions. The faith's zealots languished in cells beneath the Red Keep, deprived of Sparrows' wings by iron clamps. Each day a parchment found its way to Baelish's desk tallying fines levied upon the faithful for rebellion. Each day he smiled, for rebellion funded regency as neatly as trade tariffs. The Tyrells fumed in the south. Mace mustered banners and sent paeans to his daughter's beauty. But his letters to Tommen arrived unopened, redirected to the Tower of the Hand where a spry scribe penned courteous refusals in the king's name. Enough sweet words could sour any alliance, Baelish mused, and besides, Highgarden's granaries still marched north in wagons. Coin moved where hearts would not. One golden dusk, Baelish sat with Tommen on the Maidenvault balcony, sharing candied almonds. Ships cut the bay below, white wakes trailing like quills across parchment. "Do you see those sails, your grace?" Petyr asked. Tommen craned his neck, delighted. "The red hulls. From Volantis. Spices, pearls, perhaps a dancing girl or two." He laughed at Tommen's blush. "All bound for our keys. The harbor toll is yours by right, and this regency ensures it is paid." He plucked an almond. "Yet gold is a fickle friend. People, however, can be trained to loyalty." Petyr's gaze lingered on the boy king until Tommen shifted, uncertain whether a response was required. Later, alone, Baelish unrolled a vellum map of Westeros across his desk. Tiny carnelian stones marked garrisons still loyal to the Lannisters. Polished onyx chips signified Tyrell-friendly holds. A lone jade pebble nestled at Riverrun, symbol of the Tully girl who once trusted him. But the central riverlands bloomed with mockingbirds. Painted counters he set one by one, claiming mills, fords, minor castles. Influence, once a whisper, now sang loud as Septon's hymn. Night deepened. In a lower gallery, Queen Dowager Cersei stalked between columns like a caged lioness. Tina Merryweather attended her, whispering of debts and favors owed the new lord. Cersei's nails traced the stone as if to gouge it. "I do not need his tutelage," she hissed. "I carried 3 kings inside my womb. Yet it is Baelish who carries the realm in his purse," Tina murmured. Cersei's anger tasted of copper and wine. He put Tommen atop a clay throne. "My son should have a sword, not ledgers. And he shall when he comes of age. Until then the hand must guide." Tina placed a reassuring palm on Cersei's sleeve, though her own eyes glimmered with calculation. She had learned more at Baelish's side in fortnight than a lifetime in Myr. Cersei saw and despised, yet she also understood the cost of open war with her keeper. The cells where Sparrows shivered were never far. Over the following moon turn, the king's court donned the easy mask of prosperity. Disputes between merchants resolved at record pace, provided the petitioner first left a token offering in the Tower of the Hand. Street lanterns burned later, paid for by a modest surcharge on brothel earnings, which Baelish assured the city was far fairer than taxes on bread. Even the city watch found themselves richer. Promotions flowed like Dornish red, each signed by a spidery hand none dared disobey. Yet from the fingers to the veil drifted stories of roads fortified, levies raised in secret, and airy coffers drained. Lisa Arryn's young Robert remained sickly, but she was dead and Baelish guardian still. Coin that once rattled in the airy treasury now rang through King's Landing's taverns. Few connected the vanishing silvers to the regent's new silver-plated coach or the emerald ring that winked on his finger. In the second month of Baelish's ascendance, a raven arrived stamped with the crescent moons of House Royce. Jon Royce protested the Hand's management of the Vale, demanding a council of lords. Baelish smiled and penned his reply. Robert Arryn, in delicate health, could not suffer the rigors of travel, yet Lord Royce's counsel was ever valued in King's Landing. 2 weeks later, Royce's retinue rode through the mud gate under heavy guard, stripped of arms for safety. They dined at the regent's table, found their grievances soothed by gifts of silk and subtle threats of treason, and departed sworn to silence. Petyr counted it an inexpensive victory. Flattery cost less than war. Meanwhile, in Old Town's smoky libraries, acolytes copied dispatches for Archmaester Marwyn, who frowned over word of a city bereft of moral leash. The high septon he knew had vanished. The poor were fed, yet their piety sold to the highest bidder. Marwyn read the patterns like portents in a glass candle. In times of waxen peace, he warned a circle of novices. The wick burns unseen beneath, but Old Town's wisdom seldom sailed north before fate outraced foresight. Within the Red Keep, Tommen's lessons multiplied. Master of laws dissected charters. Master of ships taught currents and ballast. Master of whispers, Lord Petyr himself, imparted subtler arts. One morning he produced 2 coins, a stag and a mockingbird stamped in obsidian. He placed both on the map, side by side. Which is stronger, your grace? Tommen reached for the stag, gold glimmering. Father's crest. Baelish tipped the coin with a finger. It rocked, unsteady. Weight alone means little. A secret can topple a lord as surely as a sword. When you rule, you must see every coin's other face. He turned the mockingbird. Its reverse bore a folded parchment engraved so fine only a jeweler's glass could read it. Tommen squinted. What does it say? Promise, Petyr breathed. The promise that even kings bend to whispers. Elsewhere in the castle, Cersei stewed. She sent ravens to Kevin, to Lannisport, to any banner she could sway, but each plea encountered the same soft wall. The hand seal, affixed before the messages left Tommen's chambers. The regent read them first, of course, choosing which might fly. Some reached their destination with curious lines missing. Others never left the rookery at all. Like a weaver trimming thread, Baelish clipped every route that bypassed his loom. He was not careless, however. Rumor of his dominion must travel, for fear served when coin could not. In the Riverlands, small lords spoke in ale-soaked halls of a man risen from middling birth to hold a king's leash. They wondered if the mockingbird favored new allies. Baelish sent envoys bearing ornate caskets. Inside, seeds of gold roses, rare, near priceless, accompanied by notes promising that beauty could bloom even in war-torn soil. A subtle dig at Tyrells, who once claimed exclusivity over such flowers. Rivermen laughed, then planted the seeds under castle windows. When blossoms unfurled blood red instead of gold, the joke felt barbed. Still, no lord uprooted them. Autumn crept upon King's Landing, scented with cinnamon and coal smoke. The docks bustled. Sail sails swaggered beneath banners freshly designed. Twin birds caged together, one crown on shared perch. In dim counting houses, Petyr oversaw loans to bravos at cutthroat rates, wagering the crown's credit on a river of silk soon to pour from E.T. Risk, he explained to Tommen, is the heartbeat of fortune. The boy listened, dreaming perhaps of kittens, not commerce, yet repeated the lesson at supper to Cersei's mute dismay. One crisp evening, Lord Baelish convened a masked revel in the Maiden Vault. Every great house at court attended. Lions sheathed in velvet, krakens dripping pearls. Even a stray martel viper coiled round a lady's pale throat. Musicians played fleet-finger reels while hostesses coaxed laughter from men too nervous to refuse. At midnight, Petyr ascended a mirror-bright stair to address the revelers. Lords and ladies, he began, voice gentle as satin. King Tommen thanks you for your devotion. In gratitude, his grace offers a boon. The city's walls shall be renewed, its granaries expanded, its orphans clothed. A levy of 1 copper for every 100 you possess is all we ask. A ripple passed through the throng. Some scoffed, others paled. Yet none dared decline openly, not beneath chandeliers hung by the man standing above them. The levy passed with applause that trembled like glass. The next day, Baelish marveled at the ease of it. Fear disguised as festivity could raise armies. Had Ares known such alchemy, he mused, dragons might yet rule. But Targaryen fire burned hot and visible. Petyr preferred the slow ember that warmed only his hand. That ember glowed brightest when Sansa Stark's letter arrived. It bore a wolf's head and came via Braavosi merchant. She wrote from White Harbor, safe under Manderley watch, begging the king's mercy for northern grievances. Baelish traced the loops of her script. Steady now, matured, memories stirred. A girl on the Ares snow-blown parapet, trusting him in ways no one else had dared. He tucked the letter into a silver box labeled, "Awaiting Advantage." Perhaps, he thought, winter's hearth might yield embers of its own. The season turned. Lords muttered of chill winds beyond the neck. Ravens croaked of flurries in the frostfangs. The realm braced for cold, yet Baelish saw opportunity glistening like rime upon the Iron Throne. Grain prices would soar. Ships from the Arbor would fetch quadruple profit. Already he drafted contracts that guaranteed supply, provided buyers accepted liens against their estates. Hunger, after all, begot bargains. In the gods would one frosted dawn, Tommen knelt to pray, armed with a wooden practice sword. Baelish watched unseen among the red leaves. The boy whispered for strength, for friends, for mother's happiness. A pious child might grow malleable beneath the right flame. Petyr stepped from shadow. "Prayers are honored," he said softly. "When the supplicant proves worthy," he placed a slender volume in Tommen's hands. The seven-pointed star, copied in the reach, illuminated with gilt. "Study a page each night. A king who speaks scripture commands hearts as well as swords." Tommen's smile was incandescent. As the regent strode away, he considered how faith once unseated Cersei. Now he would wield it as cudgel or cushion. The sparrow's wings were clipped, but feathers could attach to any shaft he loosed. By the feast of the Maiden's Day, even Varys, long fled into riddled exile, could not have denied Baelish's dominion. Yet ascendancy demanded vigilance. The Iron Bank pressed for repayment. Highgarden bristled. Dorne plotted grievances old as Nymeria's voyage. Petyr welcomed every threat. "Chaos," he mused before a roaring hearth, "is a ladder we climb only by seizing each rung." He lifted a goblet, watching flames dance inside the wine's black heart. In that mirrored red he saw the realm, a tapestry of secrets, each thread drawn through the needle of his ambition. Winter's first true snow dusted the roofs when a herald thundered through the gate of the gods proclaiming new edicts. Tariffs on Arbor wine lifted in gratitude for advanced shipments. Minor lords granted remissions on feudal levies if they stationed men at the neck. The faith granted rights to tithe widows' dowers to fund septri hospitals. Each decree bore Tommen's shaky signature beneath a sharper flourish. Petyr Baelish, Lord Protector of the Realm. Cersei, summoned that noon, entered the Tower of the Hand wearing a mantle of sable and pride. She found Baelish alone beside a fire warming quills. "My Lord Regent," she greeted with poison honey. "I wish counsel." Petyr gestured to a chair. "Always at your service, Your Grace." They spoke of Tommen's tutelage, of debts, of rumors from Casterly Rock that Kevin massed forces. Baelish poured wine and listened, head tilted, eyes half-lidded as if in dreams. When Cersei finished, he offered a polite sigh. "The lioness chafes at her pen," he observed. "Yet you remain mother to the king. You shall sit his council when next it meets." She started, surprised. "On one condition," he added. "You will counsel with restraint." His smile cut. "Speak only when spoken to." Cersei's face hardened like kiln-fired clay. Pride warred with necessity. At last pride bent. "Very well." The words tasted of ashes. Thus ended Baelish's first season as regent. Tyrells exiled, Sparrows muted, Lioness collared, and a boy king reading nightly from a book that glinted with the regent's reflection. Yet 500 leagues north, white wolves prowled. In the east, dragons screamed across the Dothraki Sea. In the seas, iron-born sharpened axes. Power stood ever upon shifting ice, and even a mockingbird might slip. But for now, as moonlight silvered the Tower of the Hand, Petyr Baelish reclined amid ledgers fat with promise. The night whispered through open casements, carrying scents of salt, smoke, and distant snow. He closed his eyes and dreamed not of thrones, but of a slippery road climbing ever higher, each stone a secret, each secret another rung. And higher still he climbed, unseen, unchallenged, until the dream's chill air rang with bells that were not bells at all, but coins, 60,000 of them, clattering into a single waiting hand. A pale dawn found the city's alleyways silvered with frost, breath from chimneys drifting in lazy penance that made the rooftops look like a fleet at anchor. Lord Petyr Baelish rose before the candle gutters, fingers already stained with ink, and stood at his window to watch the first merchants push handcarts toward the fishmonger's square. It pleased him to begin each day by witnessing the invisible pulse of coin. A baker hauling yesterday's crumbs to feed swine, a dyer rolling a cask of violet sludge destined for the velvet workshops, an urchin slipping between wheels with pockets, ready to lighten a sailor's purse. All of them, whether they knew or cared, moved beneath a net of liens and taxes he had woven tight as a septa's veil. He dressed in layers of dust-green brocade, narrow sleeves and pearl buttons like a string of frozen tears. Over one shoulder he draped a half-cloak of gradient cloth, storm gray at the collar fading to dusky lilac at the hem, an affectation new enough to startle the court's tailors into frantic mimicry. When fashion danced, he preferred to call the tune. Page knocked timidly. "Lord Protector, the boy from Gulltown waits without. Send him to the solar." Petyr's lips curved. The boy from Gulltown was no boy at all, but a wiry man of 30, quick with daggers and quicker with lies, once paid to smuggle dusk pearls for Myrish traders. Now he smuggled words. When the agent entered, Baelish sealed the door, motioned him close, and tipped a sapphire into his palm. "You saw it. Clear as a summer sky, M-Lord. Lady Marjorie's barge quit Bitterbridge a fortnight past. She wears widow's black, says she means to seek the faith's mercy." Petyr rolled the gem between thumb and forefinger, watching the lamplight bloom and die within its cold heart. "Does she travel with arms?" "None save 2 Tyrell knights, sworn to chastity for the voyage." The agent smirked at the notion. "But there's a ship waiting at Duskendale flying mere. Ish colors. Could be they plan to whisk her cross the narrow sea." Baelish closed his fist. "Send riders north along the Rose Road. Tell the levies at Sow's Horn they are to host our grieving Rose and her companions, then escort them gently to Old Town, by way of King's Landing." He opened the study's cabinet, withdrew a parchment already bearing the king's signature, and pressed it into the smuggler's hand. "This names you royal courier. Show it to any gate captain who balks." Sapphire vanished into pocket, parchment into sleeve. The man bowed low, left silent. Baelish returned to the window. Circles within circles, he thought, admiring his own design. Marjorie Tyrell was a blossom that drew bees. Let her flutter within range of his hive, and he would bottle the honey. Should the reach protest, he possessed the perfect counterstroke. A stack of promissory notes signed by Mace Tyrell in foolhardy exuberance during Robert's Rebellion, purchased for a song from Bravos. He could demand repayment in timber, in grain, in hostages. Debt, as ever, outweighed love on the scales of power. By mid-morning the throne room thronged. Grand Maester Pycelle shuffled blue-lipped to the dais to present a phial of thick clear oil pressed from a rare eastern shrub, which he claimed would fortify the king's lungs. Tommen accepted gravely, though his eyes darted toward Baelish for reassurance. The hand smiled, and the king exhaled. Next came Oraine Waters, sun-kissed hair tied with a crimson ribbon, carrying draft plans for a new class of warship. Sleek, shallow-keel carracks with twin masts and rams shaped like open-mouthed hawks. Petyr crisped the parchment edges near a candle as he listened, delighting in Oraine's blush when he nodded assent. The last petitioners were cobblers seeking relief from a leather shortage. War in the East had driven up the cost of tanned hides. The master of guilds requested permission to import goat leather from the summer islands free of duty. Baelish weighed the plea, then announced that the crown would grant a 6-month exemption, provided each cobbler's guild pledged to tie the finished boots for the city watch. The guildsmen bowed, grateful and thoroughly netted. After the audience ended, Baelish coerced Tommen into the Tower of the Hand for midday lessons. The boy balked only once to ask after Ser Pounce. Petyr promised the kitten would attend supper if study went well. That sufficed. Before arming the king with quills, Petyr produced a pair of ivory dice. "Shall we wager, your grace?" Tommen's brows rose. "Mother says gambling is sinful. So it is when wagers exceed a man's purse. But a king must know the look of chance." He rolled the dice across a velvet blotter. 5 and 2. "High!" He passed them to Tommen, who shook, cast and frowned at Snake Eyes. Petyr clicked his tongue. You see? A single moment erases certainty. Remember that when lords swear fealty, memory of stronger hands will guide their tongues. They spent an hour translating Valyrian decrees regarding port immunities. Tommen struggled with declensions. Baelish corrected softly, patient but never warm. When the boy grew restless, he unveiled a small wooden box. Inside lay cunning miniatures. King's pieces, queens, dragon towers, and mounted knights carved in jade and jet. A new Syvas set, Petyr explained. Fresh from Volantis. Let us learn strategy by play. They arranged the board. Tommen opened eagerly, moving his catapult behind a dragon. Petyr countered with a spearman feint. After 7 moves, the king's flank crumbled. Lord Protector traced the path of downfall with his fingertip. Guard your sides, he murmured. The enemy seldom strikes where your gaze lies fixed. Beyond the palace walls, tension brewed like sour ale. Garland Tyrell gathered 2,000 men at Bitterbridge, their banners green with golden lilies, drilling daily under the bright stare of a lady widowed yet unbowed. Lord Randall Tarley, recalled from Horn Hill, petitioned Highgarden to seize the Rose Road in Marjorie's name. But old Tarley disliked wars waged without clear lines of supply, and Baelish's levies already choked the route with checkpoints. So Randall waited, sharpening patience upon his pride. In the far north, Lord Wyman Manderley convened a secret moot beneath White Harbor's Wolf's Den, feeding rum-soaked oatcakes to Sellswards while maesters hauled casks of lantern oil toward city granaries. He spoke of hunger to come and of ships bound south heavy with grain tribute for the Iron Throne but returning empty. A fat little fish's throat, he warned, is best slit in the water where blood draws sharks. His captains understood. Some whispered that Ser Davos the Onion Knight visited again beneath new name, and that raven feathers littered the beach at dawn. But ravens flew both ways. Petyr Baelish read transcripts of those feathers nightly, mapping Manderley's subversions as meticulously as he mapped the city drains. That winter's first true blizzard rolled off the narrow sea like a charging leviathan. Ice needles cracked against shuttered windows. The Blackwater froze in sluggish sheets. Even the master-at-arms posted at Mudgate layered 3 gambesons beneath wolfskin but still shivered. In the Red Keep, fires roared from dawn till midnight. Cersei stalked corridor hearths with a goblet clenched tight as a weapon, glaring at every swirl of mockingbird sigil on servants' tunics. Once she tried to summon Ser Osmond to her bedchamber, longing for conspirators, but Osney Kettleblack was long vanished, smuggled across the sunset sea courtesy of Baelish's coin. The Queen Dowager found only silence and wine. At supper one blistered night, the hand seated Cersei beside the king. He kept a polite smile frozen upon his lips as she spoke honeyed barbs about the Tyrell girl's audacity and the fickle faith of small folk. Tommen shifted at references to Marjorie. He still cherished memory of a kind smile and a biscuit shaped like a rose. Baelish watched carefully, not missing the quiver in Tommen's throat when Cersei mentioned the faith's mercy. A child grows easiest along the grain of guilt. Your Grace, Baelish interjected softly between courses. Should the High Septon bless Lady Marjorie's widowhood, the realm would rejoice, yet rumor clings to her like perfume. She may seek to clear her name by ordeal. Cersei stiffened. An ordeal by the faith is cruelty. Petyr dabbed his lips. Very if she fails. But imagine her success, your crown sullied anew by whispers of injustice. Perhaps we might avert such spectacle. His eyes hooded. A stay of any trial, decreed in the king's merciful hand. Tommen looked to his mother. Mercy is good? Cersei dredged her wine. Mercy must not undermine authority. Then let your mercy sleep, Petyr concluded, words velvet-coated iron. And let the city sleep easier. He inclined his head to Tommen, as though the boy had given the sage ruling. Confusion warred with pride in the king's soft features. Cersei's nails bit wood. 3 days later, Marjorie Tyrell arrived at King's Landing's southern gate, escorted by 400 Reach spearmen and an army of prayers. The small folk craned necks to glimpse the legend of Rosy Beauty. Many remembered her queenly tours handing bread and cheered with genuine affection. Gold cloaks parted the throng, guiding her litter through streets strung with lanterns. At the Red Keep she dismounted, wearing widow's blacks cut daringly tight, her hair veiled, her eyes shining tears unshed. Petyr greeted her in the torchlit courtyard. They bowed fractions of inches toward each other, each measuring. "My lady," he murmured. "My lord protector," she replied, tone warm enough to melt frost though her gaze remained armored. "The king bids you welcome. His hall awaits your counsel." He offered an arm. She declined politely, choosing instead to lift her skirts and pace forward alone. Yet her step faltered at the threshold, as if acknowledging that within these walls, his shadow stretched the longer. The audience endured an hour. Petyr stood behind Tommen's chair, whispering reminders of royal dignity, while Margaery knelt, head bowed. She petitioned clemency for her household knights imprisoned months before. She beseeched permission to retire to Highgarden for a period of mourning. Tommen swallowed, glanced to Baelish. The regent nodded once. "Granted," the king said, voice small. "But you will remain at court until the small council confirms your release." The boy looked relieved to deliver lines practiced earlier. Margaery's lips curved in subtle defeat. That evening Baelish dispatched ravens to Bitterbridge. "Hold position, accept crown levies of grain, send hostages." His message to Highgarden read differently. "The Lady of Flowers remains our honored guest. Any unsanctioned march upon the capital will be deemed treason against the king she once served." He sealed both with gold wax, mockingbird imprint. Snow piled along crenellations 3 feet deep when word arrived from Bravos. A faceless man had been sighted near the Sea Lord's palace. One of Baelish's whisperers had overheard a banker mention the Westerosi account. Petyr frowned. The Iron Bank seldom sent killers unless debts soared beyond patience. He reviewed the ledgers. Tommen's crown owed 600,000 dragons in principal and another 200 in arrears. He clicked his tongue. Sooner or later, coin demanded blood. Baelish summoned Tina Merryweather, instructing her to convene an emergency trade cabal. By dusk, 5 of the city's richest moneylenders knelt to kiss Tommen's signet, pledging fresh loans secured against future harbor taxes and Crownland's timber concessions. Petyr carefully inverted the ledgers so the terrified men never realized they were underwriting the very interest that frightened them. He carved from their flesh a year's reprieve, enough time, he hoped, to strengthen alternate pillars before the Iron Bank's hammer fell. To distract court and commoner alike, Baelish announced a winter masque. Every guest must attend robed as some beast of fable. The prize for finest costume would be a ring set with 4 moonstones and a kiss from the king. Silk merchants rejoiced. Seamstresses worked by candlelight until their needles bled bright spots on dove-gray linen. Cersei raved at the extravagance, yet arrived masked as a golden lioness with jeweled fangs. Margaery Tyrell appeared clothed in snow-white ermine, tiny rubies stitched like drops of heart's blood along the train, a thin retort to widow's grays. Baelish himself donned black feathers sewn into a mantle mimicking raven wings, face uncovered, the hand never hid. Amid minstrels, jugglers, and sweet wine fountains, the realm's alliances shifted as dancers changed partners. Baelish noted each pair. Garland Tyrell bending low to whisper in Arain Waters' ear, Qyburn conversing with the Redwine twins, perhaps promising marvels brewed in cellars. Cersei lingering near Tina, her voice tight but coaxing. He drifted between circles, pruning conversation whenever it threatened his scaffolds. At midnight he arranged for the musicians to pause, and Tommen stepped onto a dais to award the ring, to Lady Margaery, whose costume so dazzled the assembly that applause rattled dust from chandeliers. A hush fell as the king pressed a chaste kiss upon her cheek. Cersei's jaw clenched. Baelish savored the crunch of enamel against frustration. After, in the quiet alcoves, he spoke with Margaery privately. She thanked him for the mask, for the ring, for the opportunity to plead her innocence before the council. Her gratitude wrapped each word in silk, but he heard steel beneath. She meant to ensnare Tommen once more, to birth children that might claim the throne through a second union. Baelish smiled. "Your ladyship will find King's Landing generous while winter holds the roads," he said smoothly. "Only beware. Courtiers' hearts freeze faster than fountains. "A flower in frost may bloom all the fairer," she answered, dipping into a curtsy that flashed rubies like hidden blades. In the months that followed, the king's court walked a blade-thin path between opulence and starvation. Baelish's new granaries at Rosby filled quickly, but galleys inbound from Old Town fought treacherous seas. Each holdful of barley or oats arrived laden with dead sailors and spoiled sacks. Riots flared one night in Flea Bottom when bakers doubled the cost of a loaf. Gold cloaks quelled unrest with baton and boot, leaving 30 slain in the alleys. Baelish visited the scene at dawn, hiding distaste behind calculation. The stench of blood mixed with wood smoke. Walls were scrawled with the 7-pointed star, the paint still wet, though the sparrows themselves lay chained beneath the keep. Someone stoked memory of holy vengeance. He ordered the alleys scrubbed and paid the dead's families 6 copper each. Cheap salve for festering wounds. Yet trouble burgeoned beyond his walls as well. From Sunspear came Dornish envoys demanding justice for Elia Martell anew, emboldened by whispers that dragons stirred across the sea. The envoys left disappointed but unmolested. Petyr understood the cost of martyrs. In the Stormlands, House Baratheon's dwindling line found voice in a bastard boy named Edric Storm returned from exile. Rumors claimed he wielded a sword that once belonged to Renly, its green jewels glimmering at dusk rallies beneath the banner of a gold stag crowned by a fiery heart. Baelish needed new spies. He turned to Sansa Stark's letter again. Northern fidelity if one could anchor half the realm. He penned an answer at last. A gentle parchment praising her wisdom, promising inquiries into her family's safety, offering a place at court where snow cannot harm such rare flowers. He sealed it with a direwolf chip of obsidian set in wax mottled black and gray, an emblem he devised for her sole delight. Its arrival in White Harbor, he wagered, would stir hearts both loyal and lonely. Spring officially started 3 weeks before the snows relented. When they did, they melted all at once, turning King's Landing streets into slurry canals. Baelish expected fevers, so he ordered cisterns cleansed with lime and minted wooden tokens granting free maester visits to any house that hung a yellow cloth. The tokens bore his sigil. Even coughs owed him gratitude. With roads clear, embassies resumed. Mace Tyrell himself rode in at the head of a grand procession. 3,000 knights in impeccable order, trumpets blaring so loud the ravens fluttered from September Baelor's roof. The city cheered, though the gold cloaks eyed that many swords uneasily. Baelish greeted Lord Mace with open arms, praising his valor and hinting at a seat upon the council. Mace, flushed from the ride, accepted a banquet invitation instead. Baelish prepared one of astonishing volume. 50 courses of arbor wine braised boar, honeyed trout, sugared lemons carved to resemble roses. Over the clatter Lord Mace boasted of Highgarden's endless stores. Baelish listened, nodding, until the wine loosened tongues enough for him to slip a slender scroll across the table, one of those Braavosi notes of credit. Mace's face blanched at the sum. "Purely bookkeeping," Petyr whispered. "We can renegotiate interest if our friendship flowers." Within 2 days, Mace agreed to redeploy half his host to garrison the Rose Road under Crown Banner. Reach grain convoys resumed at modest tariff rates. In return, Marjorie remained at court, but as companion to Queen Dowager Cersei, not consort to the king. The arrangement suited Baelish perfectly. Lioness and Rose sniffing each other for thorns while he pruned whichever grew too sharply. Meanwhile, the Iron Bank's patience ended. A sleek black galley bearing an iron key upon midnight sails moored below the Red Keep. From its ramp descended Tycho Nestoris, flanked by Braavosi guards with faces like unfinished statues. He wore an oxblood cloak and carried a ledger bound in sharkskin. Baelish received him in the solar, offering pear brandy and candied ginger. Tycho declined both, then opened the ledger without preamble. The Iron Throne's obligations stand, Lord Protector. A first payment totaling 200,000 dragons is due within 30 days. His tone was cool as Blackwater ice. Petyr steepled fingers. Spring has not yet thawed the harvest. Trade flows slow. Might we discuss alternative considerations? Shares in royal monopolies, perhaps. Our bank is not a tavern to barter leases of rumor. Tycho met his gaze unblinking. We require coin. Baelish leaned forward. Coin you shall have, provided the bank extends credit for 1 additional year. Interest to increase. Naturally. Tycho's eyebrow arched. You would pay interest on interest? Indeed, because in that year the crown shall repay every copper. He spread a map, pointing to salt-rich marshes near Maidenpool recently granted to the throne by Lord Mutun for a debt of honor. We will lease these flats to Pentoshi brine merchants at triple current rates. They will pay half in advance in Bravosi coin. You will see your dragons within the fortnight. Tycho studied the map. A bold projection. Risk, Baelish murmured, is the breath of profit. He clasped a wax seal into Tycho's hand bearing the royal signet. The iron banker weighed it, then collected his ledger. 14 days, Lord Protector, he said, turning for the door. The moment he left, Baelish dispatched ravens to Pentos offering the salt leases and to Lys ordering a new print run of Lannister gold dragons. Sooner minted, sooner borrowed, sooner paid. Counterfeiting the king's own coin in Lys might hang lesser men. For the regent, it was a calculated handshake. Even should Pentoshi merchants balk, the dyed paper dragons would satisfy Bravosi scrutiny long enough to conjure real coin. Illusion, if spun taut, became reality. Halfway across the realm, Edric Storm's banner gained followers. Baratheon loyalists along the Stormlands coast, disaffected Second Sons, hedge knights undone by winter tariffs. Varys might once have quashed such sparks, but Varys was gone. Now information flowed through darker channels. Baelish sent Ser Biam, a knight of middling repute, to infiltrate the rebel host disguised as a minstrel. Biam's letters arrived weakly sewn into the linings of copper-dyed cloaks. They spoke of priests preaching of a bleeding star rising in the east, of sell sails with black sails docking at stepstones, of a red woman glimpsed far from Dragonstone. Petyr interpreted the signs. Tales of dead kings reborn, of dragons yet unseen. He considered leveraging Edric's claim to frighten Cersei into docility, but a tool wielded too soon dulls. He folded the letters into a satchel marked spider silk and waited. The king approached manhood. On the day Tommen Baratheon turned 8 and 10, Baelish hosted tournaments upon the mudflat outside Lion Gate, freshly drained and shored with timber palisade. The tilt yard never glittered finer. Pennants streaming, stands decked in spring flowers, lords in crisp doublets. Knights lined for joust while commoners swarmed hillocks to cheer. Among contestants rode Loras Tyrell's younger cousin Willis, smartly armored despite a crippled leg, determined to prove his worth with lance strapped to saddle. Another rider wore plain steel no crest. Rumor claimed he championed the people. When they clashed, Willis was unhorsed but not shamed. He rose laughing, offering his victor a Tyrell rose from his helm. The crowd roared. The plain knight removed his visor to reveal an unremarkable face, one of Marjorie's household squires, humble and bright-eyed. Baelish smiled. A perfect story to spread. That night at feast, Tommen awarded the victor a WH. cloak, inducting him into the Kingsguard slot left vacant by death. Cersei protested. The new knight lacked lineage, but Tommen looked to Baelish, who inclined his head. Valor outranks blood, the regent pronounced. The hall applauded.
Cersei drank.
Later, alone with the king, Baelish spoke of governance shifting as seasons. You shall soon wield your own seal, he said softly. Yet remember, trust is the coin of crowns, and like any coin it tarnishes. He placed the inverted stag and mockingbird dice into Tommen's palm. Keep these. Roll them when doubt gnaws. Ask which face rules the throw. The boy clutched the dice, tears brimming. Will you leave me? Not while my guidance serves. Baelish brushed stray hair from Tommen's brow. One day, when your reign stands firm, I shall retire to quiet councils. He smiled, meaning never. Sansa Stark's raven finally returned. A letter sealed with white wax imprinted by a direwolf's paw. She thanked Lord Petyr for his kind words but declined the invitation to court, citing obligations to her people. She wrote politely of memory and gratitude. Only in the last line did she hint at steel. We children of the North recall those who kept us safe and those who did not. Baelish read it thrice. Then he burned it. Embers spiraled like falling snow. A pity, he mused. Winter roses often proved the most fragrant once plucked. News from the Vale followed. Bronze Yon Royce had mustered clansmen, claiming Robert Arryn's frailty endangered their land. He demanded the boy lord be returned. Baelish countered with forged letters from Lisa's maester attesting to Robert's steady improvement under the hand's physicians. He sweetened dismissal with 3 barrels of Lannisport gold. Still the Royces marched to the bloody gate. Petyr dispatched Ser Lyn Corbray and 100 household knights to remind them of oaths. Corbray rode gladly. He owed the regent a fortune in gambling debts. Bloodshed at the bloody gate would suit Baelish fine. Each death of a proud bronze armor removed obstacles to his Vale ascendancy. As year's end neared, the court glittered yet trembled beneath rumors. Of dragons across the sea, of a Baratheon bastard gathering storms, of faceless assassins slipping through crowds, of winter refusing to yield. Baelish sat nightly at his desk, ledger columns glimmering with fresh ink, fingers numb, eyes bright. He had sold 3 harvests to pay a single debt, married rivalries to stall rebellions, strangled faith in velvet gloves, gelded lions with parchment claws. Still the ladder rose higher, rungs vanishing into clouds. On the final night of the year, bells rang high above the city, sounding the hour of the wolf. Petyr Baelish stood upon the red keep ramparts, cloak snapping, frost glittering in his hair like diamonds. Below, the Blackwater mirrored moonlight and torchfire, silver streaks across black glass. He imagined his reflection upon that water, small, distant, yet central to every ripple. Somewhere within, Tommen slept clutching dice. Cersei dreamed of vengeance and tasted ash. Marjorie knelt before her candlelit gods would shrine, plotting petals and thorns. In the east, sails black as sorrow slipped west upon dragon breath winds. But here, for this breath before dawn, the realm belonged to a man born in a storm-washed tower on the fingers, armed with nothing but charm and hunger. He whispered to the dark, as though confiding in an old friend. A mockingbird never sings the same song twice, yet each tune bleeds the heart. He touched the ruby-studded pin above his heart, a gift from Marjorie, rumor claimed, though he had commissioned it himself. Beyond the city walls, wolves howled faintly, carried on the winter wind. Baelish smiled. The ladder climbed still. Above, the first snowflake of the new year settled on the pin's blood-red stone, melting instantly. Petyr flicked the droplet to the wind and turned back toward his tower, where debts awaited and dreams, and 57 unopened letters bearing seals of falcons, krakens, lions, roses, suns, and stags. Each envelope, a rung. Each rung, a promise. And promises, he reminded himself, are the only currency that never devalues, so long as one never stops collecting. The New Year's second moon waxed above King's Landing, a pale sickle at dusk that seemed to carve the sky itself. Yet inside the red keep the glow of hearth fires and torch rings never faltered. Petyr Baelish allowed himself but 4 hours sleep between dusk and dawn, choosing instead to pace the crimson-tiled floors of the Tower of the Hand while stewards refreshed the braziers. Rest, he decided long ago, was the privilege of men content with the world they'd been given, never the tool of those determined to reshape it. Outside his casement the Blackwater glimmered, half-thawed now, the ice clearing in broken plates that drifted seaward like discarded shields. A merchant cog slid past on the tide, lanterns hooded, its hold rumored to be swollen with elephant tusk and saffron. The cog's master had purchased docking rights 3 nights prior with a jasper-handled dagger delivered discreetly to the Lord Protector's collection. Baelish fingered that dagger's hilt now, admiring how the green stone caught the lamplight. A man need not wield every blade he owned. Some were meant merely to remind others how sharp his reach could be. The castle murmured beneath him. In the kitchens, scullions battered frost from the shutters and set to gutting barrels of eels for a broth that would chase the lingering chill from lords' bones. In the rookery, squires bearing heavy leather gloves coaxed ravens onto perches, counting each black eye to be sure none were missing. Each raven, after all, represented a message yet unspent. Far below in the dungeons, the faith militants' last zealots shivered behind iron, their chants reduced to hoarse wheezes. The septon once called High Sparrow now wore his beard in ragged tufts, his tongue too swollen for sermon. Baelish visited him every fortnight, never speaking, only studying the fanatic's eyes to learn how conviction rots when starved of audience. He returned to the map room. Upon the table lay a fresh parchment no bigger than a child's slate, yet it contained half the kingdom's fate. The Iron Bank's newly inked note acknowledging receipt of 200,000 dragons in Lysine coin. The gold, melted down from long-buried Lannister ingots and re-stamped under his own mint sigil, would never trace back to him. Not unless someone plumbed the smuggler's steps beneath the dragon pit and pried open casks sealed with tar and devil-face wax. By then, the debt would be someone else's memory. He weighed the parchment with a crystal paperweight shaped like an apple, one of several trinkets gifted by Lady Marjorie after their first council supper of the winter, as though she believed a pretty bauble might coax his loyalty the way a lamp lures moths. Perhaps it did. He liked the way the apple refracted lamplight into shards across the vellum, as if scattering his secrets into 1,000 harmless fragments. At sunrise he crossed the courtyard, boots crunching the last skins of ice. Tommen's riding lesson was already underway. The king, cheeks pink, struggled to hold a tall gray charger named Silverpalm. Ser Balon Swan trotted beside him, offering gentle corrections. Baelish watched from a stone bench, noting the width of Tommen's shoulders beneath the supple brigandine he'd commissioned for the boy. The lad was filling out, muscle where once there'd been only softness. A king who looked like a king saved his hand much coin in pageantry. Afterward, he walked Tommen through the dew-striped godswood. Meltwater dripped from lip ice on branches, pattering the crimson leaves like tiny drums. "Your seat on the throne must rest upon 3 legs, your grace," he instructed as they strolled. "Coin, swords, and hearts. Coin we secure with trade, swords with promises, hearts with justice," Tommen answered, repeating last week's lesson. "Precisely. Today you shall preside over a quarrel between 2 dockmasters. Listen more than you speak. Men treasure words they believe are their own." Tommen worried his lower lip. "If I choose wrongly, then choose again tomorrow, and make the new choice sound wiser." Petyr laid a reassuring hand on the boy's shoulder. "A king's memory is the realm's memory. Rewrite it at will." While the king judged feuds, Baelish convened a private breakfast in the Tower of the Hand, inviting only 3, Oraine Waters, Qyburn, and Tina Merriweather. They dined on honeycakes, oranges from the summer isles, and a savory stew of goat simmered in mulled wine. Discussion tasted of iron and possibilities. Oraine unrolled shipyard sketches, for Carrick's already keylaid at the mouth of the Blackwater, built to his Hawkram design. If funded further, he boasted, they'd outpace any Drummond the narrow sea could launch. Qyburn, unimpressed by timber, instead produced a stoppered glass flask of pale amber fluid. "Distilled fear," he crooned, "a draught that freezes the limbs of rats. Men should prove similar." Tina raised a brow, then suggested a masked ball to unveil the capital's newest playhouses, investments quietly backed by the crown's purse. "Bread and circuses," she said, smiling, "but prettier than bread." Baelish approved each venture conditionally. Oraine would receive oak and pine from Crownland's forests. Once lords signed contracts mortgaging future harvests to the throne. Qyburn's tincture would be tested on death row criminals, though the hand demanded a written record of dosage and effect. Knowledge, after all, was the only poison worth sharing. Tina's theaters would open come summer, their stages adorned with stories flattering to the king and disparaging to any banner who dared waver. "Provide laughter," he told her, "but be certain the punchlines draw blood only where I point." A rider arrived that afternoon from the Vale, horse lathered, cloak rhymed in travel frost. Bronze Yon Royce's banners, he reported, camped 3 miles from the Bloody Gate, refusing entry until Robert Arryn appeared in person. Worse, hedge knights sympathetic to House Royce had seized grain wagons headed toward Gulltown. Baelish dismissed the messenger and penned swift orders. Ser Lyn Corbray was to challenge Lord Royce to single combat. Ancient undull custom, rarely invoked but irresistible to a man so enamored of honor. Should Royce refuse, his men would call him craven. Should he accept, Corbray's famed sword Lady Forlorn might solve Baelish's problem by dawn. He smiled at the thought, but smiled wider imagining Royce triumphant. A Lord Protector must prepare contingencies. In a chest by his desk lay a sealed writ naming Harold Harding, Robert Arryn's distant cousin, new Lord of the Eyrie under the Crown's protection. If the Vale bled itself leaderless, Baelish would step in with a lawful heir leaning heavily on his counsel, the latter rising again. Supper found the court assembled in the Queen's ballroom. Long tables groaned beneath roast duck stuffed with figs, crisp-skinned suckling pig, and wheels of soft white goat cheese drizzled in lavender honey. Harpers played beside an indoor fountain newly imported from Liss, marble dolphins spouting perfumed water into a pool lined with moonstones. Marjorie Tyrell arrived fashionably late, her gown a shifting seafoam green that clung to every curve. She steered directly for Cersei, planting a kiss just shy of the Queen Dowager's cheek, then sat 2 chairs down. The court watched, breath held, waiting for claws. Cersei surprised them all by lifting her goblet in toast. "To the Lady Marjorie," she proclaimed, voice velvet. "May her roses never wilt beneath winter's breath." Marjorie inclined her head demurely. Some whispered the lioness had learned civility. Others smelled lioness cunning. Baelish noted merely that civility and cunning often tasted the same to those unpracticed in either. During the 3rd course he approached the pair, offering a platter of sugared dates as though he were but a genial host. "Sweetness for sweet company," he said. Cersei's smile froze. She despised reminders of his low birth. Marjorie plucked a date and bit delicately. A drop of syrup glazed her lip. "My Lord Protector," she murmured. "I hear thrilling rumor that a pageant of knights will soon ride north to perform in the Vale's tourneys on behalf of House Arryn. How generous of the Crown to celebrate the Falcon's recovery." Baelish inclined his head. "The Crown's generosity knows no season." "Indeed," Cersei cut in, "though some might say the realm's coffers strain beneath such generosity." He met her eyes, allowed one heartbeat of silence. Gold, like love, multiplies when shared wisely. He turned to fetch wine, leaving them to parse whether he'd named either wise. That night, as revelers staggered to beds, a cloaked figure scaled the garden wall outside Qyburn's laboratory. The intruder moved with feline grace, blades strapped crosswise at back and thigh. Inside, flicker fire from braziers cast grotesque shadows. Corpses on trestles, jars of clouded fluid harboring what might once have been eyes, a raven stitched with copper wire twitching upon a hook. The figure advanced to a writing desk, rifled parchment, ignoring the ghoulish menagerie. A soft intake of breath when fingers found a leather ledger embossed with a mockingbird. The spy tucked it beneath cloak, turned, and froze. Qyburn stood in the doorway, one hand clasped around a glass orb filled with faintly glowing vermilion liquid. "Curiosity kills," he rasped. The figure lunged. Qyburn hurled the orb. It burst against the spy's chest, spraying crimson mist. The intruder staggered, blades clattering, then crumpled, limbs seizing. Qyburn approached, peered beneath the drawn hood. A young woman's face stared back, eyes filming white, lips foaming. He clicked his tongue in admiration of his own concoction. By dawn, the body lay in a dank cell below the Tower of the Hand, wrists bound in iron, linen soaked in vinegar covering mouth and nose to suppress Qyburn's elixir's after effects. Petyr Baelish studied the prisoner from outside the bars. She breathed raggedly but lived. "Faceless?" he asked. Qyburn shrugged. "An assassin bearing no sigil. I found a coin of bravos in her boot." "Very likely," Petyr's mind whirred. The Iron Bank's polite note, the galley's departure. Then this: "Keep her alive. We will learn the price of my head." He left Qyburn grinning into his beard. 2 days later, a courier from Maidenpool delivered a sealed chest. Inside nestled 5 leather pouches stamped with a crowned stag, and beneath them a single folded parchment bearing the Baratheon stag entwined with a fiery heart. Edric Storm's seal. Petyr slid it. The bastard's hand was careful, each letter a soldier at drill. Lord Protector, the time comes when sons of kings must claim what fathers forfeited. Kneel with me against the Lannister usurpers, and the crown's mercy shall wash your sins as Tarthus tides. Refuse, and your ladder shall stand over a grave of children. No signature, only the stag. Baelish chuckled. Threat and forgiveness in the same breath. Lawless red priests teach such confusing hymns. He penned a reply offering trade concessions through Storm's End, promising to intercede with Tommen for Edric's legitimacy, if Edric first pledged fealty. He dispatched it via Raven not to Edric but to the red priest rumored to advise him. A letter is a hook. Best bait it with vanity. By early spring the Vale's standoff burst. At the Bloody Gate, Lyn Corbray's demand for single combat met Royce's acceptance. They fought at dawn upon flagstones dusted with hoarfrost, a silent circle of armored men bearing witness. Corbray's blade, Lady Forlorn, sang a high silver note. Royce's two-handed axe answered with a bass roar. They clashed 9 times. On the 10th, Corbray slipped, nicked knee buckling. Royce's axe rose for the killing blow, then halted. Blood bubbled at his lips, point of a dagger sprouting from beneath his gorget. Corbray's squire, unnoticed, withdrew the blade and vanished into the milling men. Royce collapsed, crimson spilling across bronze scales. Corbray, panting, pointed to the body. He stumbled upon his honor, he gasped. Some cheered, others spat. But Vale Knights, bound by the duel's outcome, yielded. Hours later, ravens bore news of Royce's death to King's Landing. Petyr rewarded Corbray land near the Fingers, a treeless strip of sand, then summoned the squire to a secluded chapel. The boy knelt shaking, certain of punishment. "Rise," said Baelish. He pressed a purse of silver into trembling hands. "A lord's death should never hinge on chance. Your blade delivered certainty." The boy blinked. "If ever you want for work," Baelish murmured. "The mockingbird employs only the clever." The court's attention shifted northward again when ravens croaked of unbroken snowpack choking the neck, of wolves roaming the King's Road in packs 50 strong, of White Harbor's harbor frozen solid enough to drag galleys ashore for caulking. Traders whispered that the north looked south with hungry eyes. Baelish seized opportunity. He announced a royal bounty on furs and cured meats, paying merchants 20% above prevailing rates, payable on site in copper groats bearing Tommen's profile. Copper was cheap. Loyalty purchased with coin that jangled in a man's palm felt heavy regardless of metal. Lady Marjorie oversaw distribution to small folk, wearing thick gray squirrel trim and personally handing out warm loaves at sept doors. Cersei countered with her own charity. Barrels of Dornish red dispensed to soldiers guarding the walls, each cask stamped with a lion rampant. Tommen, delighted by both shows, asked Baelish which act the gods favored. "The gods," Petyr answered, "favor those who remember to claim credit aloud." He suggested Tommen draft a proclamation acknowledging his lady's noble service. The boy complied, and the realm saw a king wise enough to praise rival queens, a wisdom originating from the Tower of the Hand. The prisoner in Qyburn's cell stirred after 9 days. Her name, she eventually confessed under mild alchemical persuasion, was Nella of Fairmarket, though Petyr doubted the truth. Her contract: remove the Lord Protector without implicating the Iron Bank overtly. Payment: 5,000 golden honors upon proof. She supplied the faceless proof token, half a coin of Valyrian steel. Baelish turned it over, fascinated by the etched titan of Bravos glaring from the sliver-thin disc. A subtle currency. He thanked her, then offered dismissal to Qyburn. Alone, he crouched outside the bars. "You failed," he told her, "but your failure may serve yet. Deliver a message for me, one that proves your loyalty supplants coin." He slid a slip of parchment between the bars, along with a tiny vial of Qyburn's amber draft. "Drink half, peer dead. I will smuggle you aboard the next galley to Bravos in a shroud. Wake, deliver my letter." and your reward will shadow the Titan's height." She studied him, weighing secrets versus survival, then nodded. That night, 2 gold cloaks carried a corpse sack onto the same iron-keyed vessel that had once borne Tycho Nestoris. They whispered of plague. The Bravosi captain, unwilling to risk inspection, sailed before dawn. The letter within the woman's bodice was brief. "The realm's debts will be honored sooner than men think. But every investment requires security. Assassins jeopardize return. Recall your knives, and I shall deliver ports from Duskendale to Driftmark into your hands. Taxes guaranteed at half-tithe for 10 years. Persist, and I will teach the realm the cost of broken cant." Rax. It ended with the mockingbird, wings half-furled, as though taking flight or alighting. The banker could decide which. In the months following Corbray's dubious victory, the Vale quieted. Harold Harding swore fealty to King Tommen under Baelish's tutelage and took seat at the Ares High Hall. Robert Arryn at his side like a fragile moon orbiting a sturdy mountain. Bronze Yon's cousins muttered, but gold parcels eased their grief. A Royce uncle received charter to reopen the old silver mines of Runestone under Crown supervision. Baelish sent letters praising far-sighted loyalty, praising honesty, praising anything purchasable with a purse and a signature. Meanwhile, the Reach blossoms he'd planted sprouted thorns. Marjorie's presence at court spurred ladies to adopt Reach fashions. Pastel silks, pearl-seated coifs, bodices cut in swooping heart lines. Tailors who once embroidered lions now stitched roses. Cersei retaliated by expanding Lannisport weavers' guild influence within the city, flooding markets with crimson draperies bearing threads of real gold, sold at cost to undercut Reach imports. A covert trade war blossomed along every stall. Baelish watched profits skyrocket. Tariffs fattened coffers. Animosity, he reflected, is the merchant's favorite wine. The more it breathes, the richer the taste. One humid night in late summer, Tommen called upon Baelish unannounced. The boy wore simple riding leathers, hair damp from exertion. "I had a dream," he blurted, cheeks flushed. "Father, King Robert. He stood beside me in the throne room and told me a good king fights his own battles." Petyr folded a ledger, giving the boy his full gaze. "Dreams speak a language of need, your grace. What battle does your heart crave?" "I want to ride to Gulltown," Tommen said, surprising himself. "Inspect the fleet, see the Vale, show the realm I'm not just a piece on your Syvas board." The words were blunt, but Baelish admired the steel behind them. "A progress," he mused. "Kings have toured their kingdoms to cement rule since Aegon's conquest. Travel breeds loyalty." Tommen's eyes shone. "Then I may go?" "With proper escort, and only after harvest, lest grain caravans lack shield." Baelish rose, hands clasped behind back. "We shall craft an itinerary, Maidenpool, the Fingers, Gulltown, then perhaps the Trident. By the time we return, even the Starks will have heard your laugh echo off Riverstone." Tommen grinned. "Mother will object. Leave her to me." He rested a hand on the boy's shoulder. "This progress shall be your proving ground. Win the cheers of freeholders, and the realm's heart is yours." Convincing Cersei required 3 audiences and 1 carefully planted rumor that Edric Storm intended to sail up the Blackwater under Baratheon colors. The Queen Dowager, terrified of appearing fearful, relented. She insisted on accompanying her son. Baelish agreed, then assigned her the rear guard, citing tradition that mothers traveled last to oversee supply wagons and maintain letter correspondence. She recognized the slight but lacked a pretext to refuse. Preparations consumed a month. The city thrived on the bustle. Leatherworkers sold new saddles. Smiths hammered bright ceremonials. Vintners poured casks into barrels trimmed with gilt for gifting. Baelish requisitioned 8 wagons of Dornish citrus to prevent scurvy among squires, though he quietly sold half the fruit to Pentoshi merchants at double cost, pocketing the margin for a discretionary fund. "Every coin passes twice," he often whispered, once through honest hands, once through wise. Before departure, he toured the new theater district with Tina. Lanterns of colored glass hung like fireflies above cobblestone lanes. Performers in motley juggled flaming torches, laughing. They paused outside a freshly painted playbill, A Mockingbird's Mercy, a new farce in 3 acts, author unknown. The illustrated poster depicted a slender lord dangling 3 puppets, a lion, a rose, and a crown. Tina smirked, awaiting his ire. Petyr merely chuckled. Even a jest tells the truth. He slipped the usher 2 silver stags for choice seats. On a night he'd be leagues away, of course. Rumor would carry word of his good humor faster than he could. The royal progress began on an autumn dawn ablaze with crimson clouds. Trumpets blared. Hundreds lined the street of steel to cheer the king astride silver palm, white cloak streaming. Beside him rode Ser Loras Tyrell, newly arrived, pardoned, the condition of Marjorie's good behavior, helmet plume nodding. Behind them, Petyr Baelish in velvet dusk green, cloak of iridescent raven feather, the envy of half the court. Cersei followed in a gilt carriage flanked by Lannister men. 50 gold cloaks marched, banners snapping. They crossed the Blackwater stench in a pontoon train, then wound through the Kingswood where limber pine boughs brushed tents each night. Small villages poured ale for the king, who drank sparingly. Baelish ensured Tommen never fell from saddle, never stumbled, never missed a prayer. At Maidenpool, a mob of fisherfolk returned nets heavy with writhing silver. Tommen declared a feast, awarding each crewman a copper groat and a prayer. Baelish arranged that the coppers had holes pre-drilled, meant to be strung on cord and worn around necks, a daily reminder of royal grace. By the time they reached the fingers, autumn storms churned the narrow sea into slate-gray chop. Baelish's ancestral holding, a squat tower perched on a wind-scoured Dolomitic spur, stood draped in new pennons to greet them. Villagers emerged like hermit crabs from stone huts to stare at a king in flesh. Baelish's cousin, old dull Lord Gunthor, knelt to offer salt and bread. Petyr watched, secret thrill coursing. These cliffs where he once tossed pebbles into tide now echoed with hoofbeats of knights clad in enameled steel, come at his summons. Tommen insisted on dining in the hall with the household's children rather than in the lord's private solar. They served clam chowder thick enough to stand a spoon, black bread, and strong mustard seed beer. The children giggled at the king's polished nails. Tommen blushed and challenged them to arm wrestle. He lost to a tow-headed girl of 10, roars of laughter filling the rafters. Petyr saw in that moment a legend forming, the boy king who humbled himself at a pauper's table. He made certain a bard recorded every detail. After the meal, Baelish climbed alone to the tower's highest balcony. Wind slashed his cloak, salt spray pricking cheeks. He stared where sea met sky, remembering nights he'd dreamt of such cavalcades and laughed at his own gall. Yet here he stood, orchestrator of powers beyond the horizon. Satisfaction warmed him more than any hearth. A footstep behind. Cersei, hair whipped by gale, eyes hard as washed stones. "You parade him like a show dog," she shouted over wind. Petyr kept gaze on surf. "Better a dog adored than a cub hunted. He is not yours to shape. Every craftsman claims his chisel belongs only to the wood." He turned, cloak snapping. "But the wood cannot carve itself." She stepped closer, hands clenched. "When my son comes of age, your head will decorate these cliffs." "Perhaps," he replied, unconcerned. "But by then these cliffs will boast gardens where children play, and your son will water them with Lannister gold." He inclined his chin toward her carriage below, where her maids waited with lanterns. "Tend your fires, Cersei. Winter rides faster than threats." She left, cloak thrashing like an angry cat. At Gulltown the fleet awaited. 3 new Hawkram carracks afloat, oiled hulls reflecting dawn like mirrors. Orain waters greeted them at dock, bowing low. Tommen toured each deck, marveling at ballistae carved with leaping dolphins, at cabins paneled in cedar sweet as summer. He christened the lead ship Maiden's Mercy with a bottle of White Arbor vintage. Sailors cheered, gulls wheeled overhead. That eve Petyr convened a council in Gulltown's castle keep. Present, Orain, Ser Balon, Lord Gunthor, and Captain Mirios of Pentos, whose brine leases financed the Iron Bank payment. Over spiced garum stew, they negotiated rights for Pentoshi merchants to build a saltworks on Maidenpool Flats, crewed by local fisherfolk. Baelish took only 5% of net profits for the crown, a generous figure, until one remembered he owned 80% of the saltworks charter via shell trading companies. Later, Balon Swan approached privately, concern threading voice. The king's guard is thin. Reports claim Edric Storm may strike along the coast. Baelish offered calm. Storm's cell sails hug the stepstones. Should he venture north, our hawk rams will gut him before tide turns. He gifted Balon a ring set with a garnet cut like a flaming heart. Wear this. Intercept any would-be sympathizers. Say it's a trophy. They'll think the king keeps the rebel's heart in his pocket. They lingered a fortnight in Gulltown. Petyr spent hours among scribes, drafting decrees that reshaped toll structure on timber exports, rerouted Vale grain through Crownway stations, and levied a nominal shipwright excise on every vessel completed, funds earmarked ostensibly for harbor dredging but funneled into a secret trust financing Qyburn's alchemical research. One parchment redrew the lines of maritime jurisdiction, granting the City Watch authority to board foreign craft within a half-league offshore. Piracy begins where confidence ends, he told Arain. Let us be the line they fear crossing. Cersei, meanwhile, cultivated allies among Vale lords. Dinners with Lady Waynwood, hunts with Grafton cousins. Petyr encouraged it, certain she lacked coin to purchase true devotion. He seeded rumors that the Queen Dowager intended to wed a Royce heir, inciting squabbles among hopeful houses, each lavishing her with gifts to edge rivals. She hoarded the trinkets, oblivious that each token fed the perception of lioness greed. Margaery Tyrell arrived 3 days before departure aboard a swift galley, citing anxious need to see the king. She brought saffron cake and news. Her grandmother Olenna had died peacefully at Highgarden's Rose Tower. Mourning embroidery edged her sleeves. She wept prettily in Tommen's arms. The court murmured sympathy. Petyr arranged a black-clad quintet of singers to perform the Maiden Weeps for Autumn at supper, ensuring tears flowed freely. Afterward, he sat with Margaery on the moonlit terrace overlooking the bay. I grieve your loss, he said softly. She taught me the realm's true taste, Margaery answered, wiping eyes. Power and honey, a memorable recipe. Petyr folded hands. Your brother Loras recovers? His wounds ache, but pride more so. She glanced at him sidelong. He will never bow to thieves of valor. He smiled. Thieves may yet commission statues of their victims. A poor consolation. She sighed, then met his gaze square. My lord, I know you orchestrate currents deeper than I can swim. I ask only this, leave me Tommen's friendship. Ambition means little if I must stand always at daggers drawn. Petyr studied her. Could the rose desire merely friendship? He doubted, yet a friend who thought herself unthreatening could serve. Friendship then, he agreed, and brushed her knuckles with lips barely touching skin. She shivered, feigned or genuine he could not tell, and left. News reached Gulltown that Edric Storm had landed at Massey's Hook. 2,000 men flying a crown stag over a red heart marched inland. Local garrisons fell back, unsure whether to resist a king's blood. Tommen, incensed, demanded to ride south to confront the pretender. Baelish saw the spark of adulthood in him and dared not smother it entirely. Instead, he proposed a test. Tommen would lead an envoy to parley under peace banner. Show the realm you sue for unity before bloodshed, he coached. If Edric refuses peace, the blame is his. Cersei called it folly. Margaery praised kingly mercy.
Tommen chose merci.
They rode hard, leaving Cersei at Gulltown to oversee boarding of the royal baggage train. A slight she fumed over, but Loras Tyrell remained at her side, giving her no opening. Petyr took with him only 20 gold cloaks, Balon Swan, and 2 of Arain's swiftest hawk rams shadowing the coast. The parley field lay near a half-ruined sept overlooking the storm-shattered shore. Edric Storm waited atop a black charger, hair whipping, eyes alight with fervor. A red woman in crimson robes stood behind him, hands clasped. Tommen dismounted first, approached with palms upraised. Baelish's heart beat to the rhythm of crossbows hidden in wagons. "Cousin," the king called, voice clear, "let us share water and salt, and speak of peace." Edric studied him, this boy barely older than himself, crowned by accident of law, and almost faltered. The red woman laid fingertips upon his wrist. Edric seemed to stiffen, resolve hardening. "I will share neither until I know the king kneels to truth," he answered. Negotiation lasted hours relative to the war it might spare. Edric demanded Tommen renounce Lannister name, wed Shireen Baratheon, cede Casterly Rock revenues to Storm's End, and allow the Red Priests unfettered worship. Tommen offered titles, grain, even a seat on small council. Deadlock grew. Baelish stepped forward at last. "Young lord," he said, "a kingdom cannot bear two crowns, but it may adorn itself with many circlets. Accept Storm's End as independent, owing only token fealty, and let Tommen confirm your inheritance legitimate. You will rule the Stormlands as prince, a Baratheon as bright as any sunstag. The Iron Throne remains your cousin's burden." Tommen blanched, this concession unscripted, but trust held his tongue. The red woman interrupted, voice smoky. "Lawler prophesies a single king, crowned by flames. Flames gutter in storm winds," Baelish replied smoothly. "Better build beacon fires than funeral pyres." Edric wavered. The wind howled, scattering salt spray that stung cheeks like tears. Finally he nodded. "I will take Storm's End, but I will not kneel." Tommen extended a gloved hand. "Then stand with me." Edric clasped it. Baelish exhaled quiet victory. A civil war diffused, a rival turned ward. That night they dined within the ruined sept, candles guttering amid cracked frescoes. Tommen and Edric exchanged stories of hounds and boar hunts. Baelish sat beside the red woman, noting her eyes reflecting candle flame like molten coin. "The Lord of Light touches many paths," she said cryptically. "May he guide them all to my treasury," he answered, sipping wine. Upon returning to Gulltown, Cersei unveiled grim news. Margaery Tyrell had vanished, her bed unslept, her guards found asleep under draft of poppy milk. A skiff missing from harbor. Cersei feigned horror, but her eyes shone victorious. Baelish masked concern. A vanished rose could bloom in dire soil. He ordered ships to comb coastlines, posted rewards, performed the theater of worry. Privately, he suspected Margaery sailed to Highgarden to marshal new alliances. Fine. Let the West contend with her. In King's Landing, her absence reframed court politics. Cersei preened, Tommen sulked. The Queen's seat at council fell again to silence he could fill. The progress wound home. At every stop, scribes read edicts in the King's voice. Lowered salt taxes, new riders' posts, trial reforms giving small folk option of crown-paid advocates. Each decree mirrored initiatives Baelish already financed, ensuring credit tethered to throne yet purse to hand. They reached the capital amid harvest feasting. The street of flowers smelled of baking round loaves. Banners painted with the king's copper groat fluttered between taverns. Fireworks, an Associ novelty, burst in green and gold over the Red Keep, courtesy of Qyburn's pyromancers. Tommen rode through the Gate of the Gods, lifting die-carved dice skyward in salute. Crowd thundered. Baelish soaked every cheer like vintage. A year's toils distilled to this roar. That night he stood alone atop the Tower of the Hand, surveying his realm. Fires studded the city like embers in ash. Ships bobbed, towers gleamed, bells sang midnight. Somewhere below, Qyburn dissected new miracles, Orain drafted keels. Tina counted box office tariffs. Edric Storm penned oaths of fealty to a cousin he'd once vowed to depose. The latter soared, yet from east and north, rumor beat wings. Dragons crossing the sea, White Walkers stirring beyond shattered watch. A wolf girl rallying houses under dire wolf banner. Petyr Baelish gripped the stone parapet, feeling grains crumble beneath fingers. Every wall erodes, but mortar of secrets sets harder than limestone. He closed his eyes, breathed salt and hearth smoke, and whispered a promise to the wind. "Let winter come, I will teach it to thaw." Somewhere far below, the roar of revelry swelled, then cracked as though splintering beneath unseen weight. Baelish opened his eyes. A single raven wheeled above the courtyard, cawing once before winging northward. He watched until darkness swallowed the bird. Then he turned for the stair, already crafting his next rung. Dawn would break upon a kingdom still his to sculpt, but dawn brought light, and light cast shadows. He would need longer blades, subtler whispers, deeper coffers. All were within reach, for a mockingbird rises on the smallest lift of air, and the higher it climbs, the more kingdoms lie beneath its gaze, small as seeds, waiting to be sown.